In the 1970s, England was haunted by a nighttime robber named the Black Panther. The winter of 1975, a young girl was kidnapped and brought down into a darkness that she would never come back from. This is the story of the Black Panther. About 50 years ago, there were many small combined post offices and savings banks in England. The postman used to live with his family on top of the office itself. In the early 1970s, the offices were horrified by a masked robber, all dressed in black. If someone did not cooperate during the robbing, he did not hesitate to get violent or even kill. The newspapers named him the Black Panther. In the village of Highley in Shropshire County, the Whittle family would read about the Black Panther in the newspapers, not knowing that later on he would ruin their lives. This is where 26-year-old Ronald Whittle lived and run a successful bus company founded by his father George. In the same village, Ronald's mother, Dorothy Whittle, and his 17-year-old sister Leslie, lived. In the mornings, Dorothy always used to come up to Leslie's room with breakfast before she went to school, but in the morning of January 14th, 1975, her mother was met by an empty bed, and the daughter's clothes were neatly folded together on the chair. In the living room, there was a letter saying, "No cops, $50,000 in ransom." The money was to be taken to a mall where there were 3 telephone booths. The kidnapper was supposed to call one of the booths between 6 p.m. and 1 a.m. that night. The Whittle family gathered the ransom money, but also contacted the police. When night came, Ronald went to the Swan shopping center with the ransom, followed by discreet civilian-clothed police officers, while journalists and curious people crowded the mall to maybe get a glimpse of the kidnapper. The media had learned about the kidnapping and published everything they knew without thinking of the consequences it could have. When it was 9 o'clock and no one had called, the police thought that the kidnapper had been discouraged by the huge crowd and that Ronald could as well go home. Which was a big mistake, because at midnight the phone in one of the booths actually rang. But no one was there to pick it up. The police would make more mistakes in the search for Leslie. And the situation got harder because several different police districts started to get involved with this case. On January 16th, a quarter before midnight, the phone rang at Dorothy Whittle's home, and the kidnapper announced that there were instructions to pick up in a phone booth in Kidsgrove in the county of Staffordshire. Ronald consulted with the police, and at 2:30 p.m. he was on his way to the telephone booth. It took him half an hour to find the message. Ronald was instructed to go to Bathpool Park, a large public park built on top of an old coal mine, which was nearby. There he was ordered to drive onto a narrow road at Park, drive up to the wall and blink with the headlights, look for the flashlight, run to the flashlight. But a problem occurred, because it was so dark at night. Ronald ended up waiting at the wrong spot. No matter how much he blinked his headlights and yelled out in the dark, nothing happened. It wasn't until Ronald drove around the park he understood that he was standing waiting at the wrong spot. Ronald eventually gave up and drove home. The family waited for the kidnapper to contact them again, but to no avail he did not. Instead, they received frightening information about his identity. On the night of 15th of January, a security guard had been shot 6 times in the back at a shipping port in Dudley, West Midlands County. A week later, police found an abandoned car that belonged to the kidnapper. The vehicle contained, among other things, Leslie's towels and ammunition and fingerprints linking the Black Panther to the car in question. In early March, police searched through Bathpool Park. They opened an inspection well and climbed down the metal ladder. 16 meters down, they found a narrow rectangular platform stretching from wall to wall. On top of the platform there was a sleeping bag and a foam rubber mattress. A metal wire was attached to the ladder on the wall. The wire went straight across to the other side of the platform and down. At the end of it, Leslie was hanging with the wire around her neck, naked and dead. Forensics found that she died just a few days after she was taken from her home. When Leslie fell, or was pushed, from the platform, the wire pressed a nerve on her throat and she died by the shock of it. A huge hunt for the perpetrator started, but it took over 6 months before he was arrested. And it happened because an unrelated accident. Late in the evening of December 11th, 2 police officers in Nottinghamshire drove around on a routine patrol when they noticed a man walking all alone in the dark. They found it a bit strange, so they started talking to the man. The man quickly pulled out a sawed-off shotgun, and the police just as quick arrested him. That man turned out to be the Black Panther. His name was Donald Nappy, born in 1936. He had had a tough upbringing, and in school he was bullied and called Dirty Nappy. It wasn't until when Donald enlisted in the army that he felt right. In 1958, Donald left the army and settled in West Yorkshire with his wife Irene and daughter Catherine. For his daughter's sake, he took the surname Nielsen. Still, Catherine hated her father because of how strict he was. Outside of the home, Donald jumped from work to work, and he blamed society and especially immigrants for his lack of success. That's why he took the right to break in and then rob post offices. After a few years, he began to dream of a big plan that could make him able to retire from risky crimes. In 1970, George Whittle died and left everything to his life partner Dorothy and their children Ronald and Leslie. But George was married to another woman, and when she appealed the will, the newspapers picked it up. Donald read about the dispute and felt that he now found a family that could pay a big ransom. He drove to Highley to map out where the Whittle family lived, and on the night of 14th January 1974, he struck. In June 1976, Donald was brought to trial in Oxford for the kidnapping and murder of Leslie Whittle. Donald claimed that he treated Leslie well. She had enough to eat and drink, a sleeping bag, a flashlight, magazines, and puzzles. The metal cord around her neck was just there to prevent her from escaping, and it was carefully wrapped in plastic to avoid scratching. As soon as the ransom was paid, Donald planned to bring the girl back alive and well. Before that could happen, she fell over the platform and died. However, the prosecutor pointed out that Leslie was dehydrated and had an empty stomach when she died. He also argued that Donald had murdered her because she had accidentally seen his face and therefore became a dangerous witness. The jury followed the prosecutor's line, and Donald was sentenced to life imprisonment. At a later trial, he was sentenced to 3 more life sentences for people he murdered in connection with a mail robbery. Donald Nielsen died of illness in prison in 2011. Thank you for watching this video.